What's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. This is episode 9. For this one, we're back at the Borgata in Atlantic City, and this is the day after the previous video, which was a pretty rough session where we were in for 1,000, out for 0. So very next night, right back at the tables, trying to get it back. Without any further ado, let's get right into the hands. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Let me know how you think. Helps the channel, helps me out a ton. So let's get into the hands. We start our session at 8 p.m. We buy in for $1,000, which is the max. At 8:02, the very second hand of the session, we get involved with pocket queens from the small blind. Under the gun limps, the button opens to 20. I make it 60. Folds around to the button, and he calls. The flop comes 4-5-7 rainbow. Pretty safe board for queens. I c-bet out to $50. Villain makes the call. The turn is now the 5 of spades. Again, pretty safe card, makes it less likely we're up against the set, so I continue for $100. He raises to 225. This sets off some alarm bells pretty quickly in my head, although the board hasn't really changed unless he has a 5. Quads, they say, are hard to make, and there aren't really many 5s that our villain should have here other than pocket 5s or maybe ace 5 when he opens from the button and calls a 3-bet pre-flop, so I make the call. River is now the 2 of clubs. I play in flow and check. Now the villain bets out 425. Tough spot here, very early in the session. I don't really know much about this guy. Haven't seen him around before. Doesn't feel good. I think pocket kings or pocket aces would have re-raised pre from the button, so I kind of rule those out. There's really not a reasonable straight that he could have here. Ace 5 is possible, but there's only 2 combinations available of that hand. A set of 4s, a set of 7s, again, totally possible, but I think those hands should have folded to my 3-bet pre-flop. I tank for a long time and eventually come to the conclusion that queens is just too strong to fold here, so I make the call. Unfortunately, he shows us pocket 4s for the flop set. A little bit of a loose call pre, to be honest, but I did have a feeling we were behind here. That call in the river was certainly not my best work, and we are down big early to start off this one. A little while later, we have ace 9 off in the big blind. Cutoff opens to 15. Button and small blind call, so I come along as well. The flop is ace, jack, deuce, 2 clubs. Check, check, and the cutoff bets 15. Button makes the call, and I call. The turn is now the ace of hearts. I check. Cutoff makes it 50. The button folds. The cutoff has about 300 left, so I min-click it up to 100. He calls. River is the 7 of diamonds. I bet 175, hoping to induce a jam, since he'll only have about $75 left. Unfortunately, he just calls. I table my hand and take it down. He flashes a jack and mucks. A little bit of a rebate from that queen-queen disaster to start off the session, and we're on to the next one. In this next hand, we have 6-8 of clubs in the hijack. I open to 15. The cutoff pops it up to 50. I'm a big fan of suited connected cards, so I make the call. The flop now comes ace, king, 7, 2 clubs. Not bad for 6-8 of clubs. The action goes check, check, and the cutoff opens to 40. Big blind folds. I make the call. Turn is the 7 of diamonds. Very interesting card. I check. The cutoff makes it $150 to go. He has about 600 left, and I'll get it all if the flush hits, so I make the call. River, however, is the 6 of spades. Now, I think for a long while here, I actually consider bluffing out because I kind of get the feeling that if I don't bet, he's going to jam. Obviously, I can't call a jam. If he checks back, I also most likely lose, so my only chance to win this hand is to bet out. Unfortunately, after a while, I chicken out and decide to just check. He does jam, and I snap fold. However, I really wish I'd gone for it, as I don't think he was all that strong. All the draws missed, and I just don't believe that an ace jams there. I think he would likely check back and take his value to showdown. I'm a little shook after the queen's hand earlier. I just felt like there'll be a better spot down the road. Didn't go for it this time, but I did take a mental note of this player. Later on, the same player would pull a very similar move, except this time he got called and had absolutely nothing. He mucked his hand. So maybe the 6 was good enough in that spot. We're gonna keep this in mind for later. In this one, we have pocket kings in the cutoff. Let's try to win this time with a premium. Under the gun limps. Under the gun +1 makes it 15 to go. It folds to me and I raise to $40. Under the gun calls. Under the gun +1 calls. The flop comes out king, 9, 4, 2 clubs. Not bad. The action checks around. The turn is the 10 of spades. Under the gun now leads for 75. Under the gun +1 calls. We are definitely raising it up here. I make it 200 to go. Really hoping to get 1 call to set up a nice river jam. Under the gun calls, under the gun +1 folds. The river is the 2 of spades, as clean as it gets. Under the gun checks, and he has about 500 left. I shove. Under the gun doesn't like it and starts talking out loud, seemingly to no one, because he's not even looking at me, just kind of talking into space here. Goes, what do you think I have here? Ace King? Do you have Ace King? Why am I calling this? Oh, I don't know what to do in this spot. What are you putting me on? Just all kinds of nonsense trying to figure out whether he's going to make the call or not. Unfortunately, eventually, he does decide to make the fold. Still, nice to flop top set and take down a decent pot. In the next hand, we have Ace King of Hearts on the button. Under the gun +2 opens to 15, middle position calls, and the cutoff calls. I make it 50, and the big blind pops it to 165. He only has about 225 left behind. I consider shoving in this spot, but I'll be playing the hand in position, so I decide just to make the call. The flop comes 6-5 deuce, rainbow. He shoves, I fold. And then he shows us Ace King offsuit. So really wish I would have gone with my gut and shoved pre-flop. Best case scenario, he folds, we pick up the 165. Worst case, it's most likely just a chop. So wish I would have gone with my gut on that one. I only included this here just because I think that that's a situation where I wanted to shove and I should have gone with my gut, but because I was in position, I chose to take the safer route. Positioning matters so much in this game, but when you have a premium hand like Ace King suited against a weaker player with a short stack, I really think you should just go for it in that spot. So wanted to include this here. Took a little bit of a loss on that one. Should have just gone with my gut. In the next hand, we have Ace 9 of clubs in the small blind. Middle position raises to $15. There's two callers. I call, and under the gun calls. The flop comes Ace 8-5, 2 diamonds. It checks around. Turn is now the 10 of spades. I lead for $25. Under the gun pops it up to 50. The button calls, and I call. The river is another 10, the 10 of hearts. I check. Under the gun opens to 75. The button folds, and I make the call. She shows Ace 6 off, and we take it down with Ace 9. In the next hand, we look down in the small blind to Ace Jack suited. There is a limp from under the gun and middle position. I pop it up to 20. The big blind raises to 70. Under the gun calls, and I decide to just make the call as well. The flop comes beautiful for our hand, Jack high with 1 diamond. I check. Big blind makes it 100 to go. Under the gun calls. This is the same guy from earlier that may have bluffed us out of a huge pot when we had the pair of sixes. So I am absolutely not letting him get away with it here. I decide to go for the check raise with top and a very speculative backdoor flush draw. I make it 225. He snap folds, which is exactly what we thought was going to happen, but under the gun, who's the player from the set of kings hand, starts talking out loud again. He goes, do we both have sets here? I guess if we both hit quads, we get the bad beat, huh? Then calls. Turn is the 8 of diamonds. Now, picking up a draw to the nuts, I consider betting again, but I'll be honest. The speech play has me a little bit rattled here. It's already a very big pot, so I exercise some pot control and check. Under the gun checks back. The river is another 7, the 7 of spades. Missing backdoor diamonds, I kind of just want to take this to showdown. There's a decent chance I'm up against an overpair here, like queens or kings. I wouldn't completely rule it out. I did make a very big check raise on the flop, and then there was all that talk about sets. Normally when someone says things like that, they do not have what they're talking about, but in this case, our hand is strong, not super strong. So I decide to check, and under the gun snap checks back and shows us pocket tens. I show the ace jack, we take the hand down. To be honest, I think we could have got a call on the river there if I made a middle sizing, maybe around 250, 300. Very good speech play by the villain in this one. Admittedly, he got me. I really should have bet that river. Worst case scenario, he just folds, we take the pot down anyway. Best case, we get some extra value. When the 7 comes out and pairs the board, it makes it very unlikely our opponent has a set, since we can account for 2 of the jacks and 2 of the 7s. Now, pocket 2s is a very reasonable holding for our opponent to have here, and if he actually did have a set, 2s would be the most likely set for him to have. So I don't hate checking the river, but I think a bet there for thin value would have been better. This next one, we have ace king of hearts again in the cutoff. There's a couple limpers to me, I make it $20, and only the button calls. This is our friend from earlier who likes to bluff. The flop is 6-3-3, rainbow. I continue for $25, the button calls. Turn is another 6. I continue again, this time for $55. The button calls. The river is the 10 of diamonds. I check. Button bets out $55. Kind of feels like he's trying to steal it. We have ace high here. Really good chance we're ahead, so I make the call. And he shows queen 10 offsuit. Not really sure what he was doing calling on the flop or the turn there. Hit a 10 on the river there, so got there on us, but those are the kind of hands this guy's playing. Calling with queen 10 off on 3-3-6 and then 3-3-6-6. Don't know why he thought queen high was good, but these are the types of players we want to play against as much as possible. So we lose this one, but very happy to continue playing with this guy. In the next hand, we look down at my favorite hand, Jack 10 in the small blind. The button opens to $20. I make the call, and the big blind calls. We are 3 ways to queen jack 7, 2 hearts. I check, big blind checks, and the button continues for 30. With middle pair here, backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw, I'm not going anywhere. I call, the big blind calls as well. The turn is now the ace of hearts. Very, very interesting card. I check, the big blind checks. The button makes it 35. It's an extremely small sizing. We have so much equity on this board with a pair, a straight draw, and the second nut flush draw. I decided to raise it up to $100. The big blind immediately jams for $280. Button tanks for a long time and calls, leaving about 500 left behind. So for only 180 more here, it's really tough to fold. I kind of feel like I'm behind when we get a jam and a call in this situation from my raise. However, if the flush does come in, we have the second nuts. So I really feel like getting 4-1 here. I'm gonna make this call, and if one of them has a small flush, one of them has a set, we can win this whole pot. So I call getting something like 4-1. The river, unfortunately, is the 9 of spades. I check to give up, and the button checks back. Big blind shows a baby flush with 4-6 of hearts, and the button shows a very sad set of queens and folds. Honestly, I did not want to call that extra 180, and I really should have laid it down here, but getting 4-1 odds, my reads were pretty spot on. We were up against a small flush and a set. It really felt like that could be the situation here, or possibly a straight. With the second nut flush draw, it was too good of an odds to lay it down. However, I did have a gut feeling that we were behind, so I do wish I would have made the fold to save the extra $180. However, if the heart hits, we get it all. It just wasn't meant to be on this one. Now for the most interesting hand of the session, in my opinion. We have ace queen offsuit from middle position. I open to 15. The button makes it 60. I call and we're heads up. The flop comes king 10-4, 2 spades. The action goes check, check. The turn is the 10 of clubs. Now the big blind leads out for $50. When he doesn't continue on the flop, but bets out on the turn, I think he may have missed this board. I think he may have missed this board and is just taking a stab. So I decided to take a shot here and raise it to 125. Looking back, this is way too small of a size, something I've recognized a little bit as a leak in my game. My raise sizes need to be bigger. So in this instance, he snap calls. River is now the ace of spades. Our opponent thinks for a minute and announces all in. Now, I am very afraid of ace king here, but the all-in seems so weird with so much out there. There's a straight, a flush, a paired board, and I just raised him on the turn. He made it 60 pre-flop, checked the king-high flop, led turn on a paired board, and then donk shoved the river after getting raised. I just feel like he would let me blast off again if he had a really strong hand here. It's very similar to the hand from the prior session when the guy shoved on the scare card to try to get me to fold when I had pocket sevens. This is really reminding me of that hand. I just don't know what he could have in this situation that's this strong that he would check the flop, bet the turn, and only call my raise without shoving on the turn. It's very possible he has a flush draw here. The ace brings the flush draw in, but when he made it 60 pre-flop, I'm not sure what 2 suited cards he could have here, unless we're specifically up against queen jack suited. It seems more likely he would have a suited ace, and the ace is out there. He could have flopped a set of kings and ended up with a full house. I am a little concerned about that, but that's about the only hand that I'm really, really worried about here. And if he has that hand, why would he shove in this situation? Why would he not let me bet? There's something weird about it. There's something off. I just don't believe him. It just seems like a really weird line to take. I go into the tank for a long time here. I really, really think this one through and just decide that his line does not make a ton of sense to me. So I put in the call, and our opponent turns over aces. Got to give this guy credit. Not for 1 second that I considered he may have pocket aces in this situation. It's a hell of a hand, especially considering that I had an ace in my hand. I had an even ace king was a possibility, but aces to me just seems so unlikely. Gotta give him credit. He took the most aggressive line possible, and it worked. Because his line, in my opinion, made no sense, and he really got me on this one. Kudos to him. We get smashed here, lose a big chunk of our stack. We're left with only about $450. going into the very next hand, which would so happen to be our last hand of the session. In this hand, we have Queen Jack suited on the button. There's a couple of limpers. The cutoff opens to 20. I make the call, big blind calls, and middle position calls. We're multi-way to a flop of Ace, Queen, Jack, Rainbow. This is amazing. One of the best flops we could ever ask for. Checks to the cutoff, who makes it 35. I'm not wasting any time here. Raise to 100 with 300 left behind. Middle position calls, and the cutoff actually folds. So we are now heads up with middle position, who limp called 20 pre, then cold called my raise to 100 on the flop. The turn is the 10 of clubs. Now I'll admit I don't love this card as we're now losing to any king, but it actually does give us more equity and a real flush draw. He checks to me, and with a pot-sized bet and the whole world, nothing to do here in my opinion but jam. We have such a short stack. We have 2 pair, royal flush draw. I'm putting it all in. He thinks for a while, but eventually does make the call. Based on this, I'm really not sure if I'm ahead or not, but let's improve on the river just to be safe. Unfortunately, the river brings the 4 of hearts, the blankest of blank cards. I announce that I have 2 pair. He says, so do I. I already know what that means. I turn over my hand. He turns over ace 10 offsuit and takes it down. I really knew there was a decent shot we were behind on that one, but with 2 pair, a royal flush draw, and a short stack, I still feel good about getting it in. After this hand though, I recognize I'm not playing my best and the cards are not falling my way, so I collect my things and once again, call it a night. Well, that was another tough one here at Borgata. Wouldn't have played that last hand any differently. We have 2 pair, we have the straight draw, we have the flush draw, we have the royal flush draw, and a pot-sized bet left behind on the river. Don't think I would have played any differently, just didn't hit. The ace-queen hand, certainly regret the way we played that one, but I should have folded. Most players, I think, would fold in that situation. Whereas, if he checks to me, there's definitely a possibility that I throw a bet out there. I mean, with my exact hand, I don't. I absolutely check, take my showdown value in that spot, but he doesn't know what I have. Definitely could have had the backdoor flush, could have hit straight. And him leading like that, wild times. But in for 1,500, out for 0. Rough one today at Borgata. Certainly not running as well as we ran in Vegas, back in Atlantic City. Really tough start, but overall still not too upset, other than playing the ace-queen hand pretty badly. That was a really rough call, but yeah, just got to do better. All right, son. Ready? Ready for your big poker hand debut? No? Not excited? Yeah, well, don't worry, son. We lose this hand anyway, so I'm not excited to share it either.